Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corkin here. I'm the co-host of this show. And so for those of you who are new to listening to this particular podcast, you can check out our archives. We've got all kinds of interesting interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of different companies. And I personally, my day job is as co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And I also serve as the marketing communications chair for the EO San Francisco chapter. And I'm going to get to our guest in a moment, who's going to be talking a bit about how businesses can collectively work together to lower their costs when it comes to benefits and health insurance and things like that. Such an important topic. We're going to talk about that. Before we do, of course, this episode is brought to you by EO San Francisco. And EO, or Entrepreneurs Organization, is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 16,000 plus influential business owners with 200 chapters in 60 plus countries. And if you are the founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company that generates over $1 million a year in revenues, and you want to connect with other like-minded successful entrepreneurs, EO is for you. And the EO San Francisco chapter enables leading entrepreneurs in the Bay Area to learn, grow, and achieve greater success. And if you go to eonetwork.org/San Francisco, you can learn all about what we do over there. All right. And my guest here today is Ingrid Romero. She is a longtime business coach, entrepreneur, performance specialist with Insperity. She spent 18 years as an executive in the fitness industry, and we're going to get into her background and what she did in there and how it relates to what she does now. And Insperity, also very generous to be a sponsor of the EO San Francisco chapter. We're really proud to have them as a partner, helping our businesses to grow. But Ingrid, let's get into your backstory, because you got this really interesting background. You were studying business and accounting in school, and then, like many do, you were in college and you realized, no passion for this. I would like to go into exercise physiology. And your dad, what did your dad say to that? He wasn't too thrilled about that idea.
Well, he wasn't. I will tell you, he wasn't very. And he's a really supportive guy. So I got to put that out there. I love my dad, very supportive, like heroic to me on so many levels. That was a very difficult conversation because I was in the middle of my senior year.
Ooh, late.
So, the end line, the finish line is in sight. And I had a conversation. I said, I just don't think this is what I want to do. And it pretty much was too bad. You can go back and do the fun stuff later, but you're going to finish. And this will be good for you no matter what. It's kind of like eating your vegetables. You're going to finish. It's a business degree. It's general. You'll use it no matter what you do. You're going to finish. Okay.
And was he an entrepreneur himself, or in accounting business?
Not at all. He's a surgeon.
A surgeon?
Not at all.
Right.
Maybe that was it. Maybe he didn't understand the drive. I don't know. He's
been through many years of schooling though, and probably experienced the kind of doubts that you get at different points along the way.
Well, I think he knew what he wanted to do at a young age. And so I don't know that he understood why I would change that so suddenly. But I will tell you that I graduated, and then I did the job for about a year and felt like I'd rather stick a pencil in my eye than continue. And so then I had another conversation with my dad and said, so I'm going to quit. And I have a job opportunity to go in the gym and start working in the gym full time. And he said, what are you going to get paid? I said, well, it's about 50% of what I'm getting paid now, but there's a room that I live in that's like attached to the gym. So it's rent free.
There you go.
And he said, you know what? Now's the time to go do it. You're 22 years old. Go do it now. You can always come back and get a real job later.
Yeah. But you have the background, you have the accounting degree. So that comes full circle, right? It's helpful as well. You actually work your way up as an executive in the fitness industry, spent a lot of years doing that and kind of coaching and guiding different gym owners on how they could grow their business.
Well, and to be honest, John, I worked corporately for a while and ran a team of 6,000 to 8,000 trainers, instructors at one time across the country. And, so there was a lot of strategy and vision and execution around. We had a great team of folks that worked on that. It was a great experience for me. That was the culmination of sorts of my time in fitness, other than like my side aspect of that is I was a personal trainer. I was a presenter I traveled the world kind of doing all that kind of stuff as well. So I had a great career in fitness, loved every second of it, never looked back, never really needed to go find a real job.
Yeah. And so you end up though leaving that industry and you kind of find yourself at a crossroads,
Right.
thinking about what your next chapter is going to be like. And talk a little bit about what attracted you to going into the role that you're in now and have been for the
Sure.
last few years in performance coaching.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, the truth is there was a part of me that felt like I was doing something that I was okay at, I was good at, but I wasn't really, I hadn't really found the thing that I wanted to do. And so I was kind of searching. I was thinking maybe I'll go back to school, maybe I'll do some things. And then as luck of sorts, fate would have it of sorts, my company did a massive restructure, private equity restructure, and they did 19 or 20 of us were let go in a day. And so that catapulted me, like many people understand, that catapulted me on a very quick road to find something different. And I did consulting and I worked in the fitness industry across the country, working with different club chains at that time, and also was looking at what else is there. So that's when I started to get into leadership coaching and executive coaching and really love the coaching aspect and really understanding what makes a great leader and how does each person show up as a great leader
Hmm.
individually, uniquely, true to themselves. And so that was a huge source of I had a lot of passion for that. And I was also trained at that point to be a facilitator. Learning and development was also in my background from all of my experience. And so I was trying to pull all this together. I couldn't figure out, like, how do you make a job out of this? I had different coaching jobs. Some would use some would use more like coaching aspects. Some would be more business consulting. And I was back and forth. And then I happened across Insperity in 2018. And there was a role there called performance specialist. That was the first role. I've actually on my third role in 4 years with Insperity. I just fell in love with this company. But the first role as a performance specialist, as it turns out, is a very unique role um, to Insperity. We're the only ones in the PEO space that has someone assigned to every client that works alongside the client strategically around mission, vision, values, leadership development, executive coaching, all of those aspects of, not just what are you going to go do, but how are you going to go do it? And how do you make that unique to you? And so I happened into that role and fell in love with the job, with Insperity, became a manager of HR services throughout the COVID years. And then this spring actually took a role as a district manager for them, opening a brand new office for us.
And I'm curious, maybe it's a little bit of a cliche to say that business in a lot of ways is like, fitness or is like sports or something like that. But I want to hear your perspective on this from having spent so many years in the gym and as a personal trainer, working with people early in the morning, late in the day, tired, got other stuff going on, motivating them, getting them to do the things when no one else is watching
Right.
and kind of some of the ways that that relates to the work that you need to do as a business owner.
Oh my goodness. How long is this podcast, John?
Take as long as you like.
There are so many parallels, and I'll be honest, I don't think I know I didn't know that when I first kind of made the jump, and it becomes more clear all the time. And so, I'll go back to some of the mantras that I always used in fitness, which is, it's about discipline and consistency more than it's about intensity.
Mm,
James Clear talks about that as well. Like intensity is not the thing. Consistency trumps it all the time. It's
mm,
how you show up every single day. Well, I got to be honest, as a business owner, as a leader, it's the exact same thing. It's the intensity. Well, you, you're gonna run out,
yeah.
but
You'll burn
how
out.
can you show up consistently and even on the days when you don't really want to, right? So
Hmm.
you've got to have the discipline to know that the hard yards, the blocking and tackling and the hard yards show up the more you do it, right? So excellence, as Aristotle said, is what we do consistently. It's the habits we've built. And so whether it's about taking care of your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, the wealth-being of your business. It's all the same principle. It's what you do every day that's going to dictate the output. It's not the intensity of how you start, it's the consistency of how you keep going.
Yeah, something really interesting about Insperity is that the category that we're talking about here that Insperity is in is PEO, which what does that stand for?
Professional employer organization.
Okay, that's kind of a wonky term,
It
but
is.
basically what it means is there's all these small businesses that you don't have collective buying power. They don't have 5,000 employees. Maybe they have five, maybe they have 10, maybe they have 50, 100, whatever. But they don't have the leverage that they would if they were a
Right.
much larger organization to be able to provide those benefits. And it was kind of an aha moment in the 80s that they realized that there needed to be even a change of law. And so actually the founder of Insperity was involved in that. So talk a little bit about that history.
Yeah. So Paul Sarvati is our current CEO, and he's also one of the founders of Insperity. And as the story is passed on, and we started in 1986, and it really birthed out of failed entrepreneurial efforts of sorts, or numerous. Because I don't ever believe an entrepreneurial effort is necessarily failed. Because if you're winning or you're learning, right? So there's a lot
Yeah.
of learnings in this entrepreneurial efforts. And I think one of the big learnings that Paul would talk about is that, and I love this quote from him that I think most business owners would relate to, which is no one gets into business to be an employer,
Hmm.
right? You got into business because you had a dream, you had a goal, you wanted to go do this thing. And then lo and behold, you had to hire some people.
Yeah.
And we call it an administrative burden. I don't really like the word because I'm a believer in people, and I do love people. So I don't like to associate the fact that you're hiring people, but that it's a burden. But there is an administrative burden that happens as an employer. We know that. It's just reality. And so if there's a way, and I think this was the hypothesis originally, is there a way to minimize and mitigate the administrative burden and the risks associated with being a small business owner so that small businesses can find a way to thrive quicker? Because we know, and it's our mission statement, that we help businesses succeed so communities prosper. It is the SMB that creates and really helps drive the prosperous community. And so when you're a believer in that, how do you come alongside and support SMB owners so that they can alleviate not just the burden, but the risk, as you've also mentioned, and help drive top line and bottom line so that you can be more successful? And that's the idea. That's
Yeah.
where the idea was created.
And so where it shows up or the areas in which it's helpful, particularly are health insurance, different benefits, 401ks. Talk about some of the different.
Workers' compensation,
Okay.
EPLI. So I'll go through that because I don't want to presume that everyone knows, but employer practices liability insurance. So this is any time that you might be named in a wrongful term, an EEO claim, et cetera, in the state of California. That's very, very real.
Mhm.
Workers' comp, obviously, also very real. And then, in benefits administration. And so, as you've mentioned, one of the unique things about PEO, and I think especially about Insperity in terms of how we um, administer benefits, is that we do have huge buying power. And unique to Insperity, we don't broker our benefits, we don't sell our clients benefits, we actually buy benefits on behalf of and then just administer the benefits. So the clients that are joining with Insperity have the same benefits I have.
Hmm.
It passes on. It's the same. And so our buying power allows smaller businesses to have those Fortune 500 benefits at a fraction of the cost because we're one of the largest buyers with our insurance partners. And of course, that will pass on with workers' comp, with EPLI as well. You're entering a very large pool that obviously, not just in terms of your first time, but especially as renewals come up. And because of our buying power and our multi-year contracts that we secure, we're not as subject to the fluctuations in the market that if
Mm.
you broker insurance, you would suffer from. And so that's a unique aspect. So any PEO can give you the leverage of larger scale. But I always tell people, just make sure you know how they're getting their benefits, and make sure that it's not just at the date you're signing up, but how will your renewals be affected later, and how subject are you to the market at that point and to your own lost claims? Because let's face it, insurance companies make money when the premiums outweigh the claims. And so
Yeah.
any small business knows that any year the claims are high, their insurance renewal will suffer. The insurance company has to make money back. Well, what if you've got that large buying, or you're in a larger pool?
Averages is
You're
out.
not playing against it's a smaller wave.
Yeah, yeah. And
Right.
talk about some of the other categories. So there's also EAP programs, there's
Mhm.
dental, there's vision, there's
Oh my
401k.
gosh.
Something that, a small business with a couple dozen employees or even 5 or 10 employees could never cobble
That's right.
together all those different programs.
And so again, you've got the large scale of that. And state of California, in fact, if you're over 5 employees starting next year, you have to have a 401k.
Mm.
Um, and if you don't provide one, the state of California is happy to provide one for you.
Mm.
So there's, John, what it really speaks to, because we could talk about all the programs, and part of benefits being employee assistance, EAP, which is a phenomenal program that allows for, Care Loop, which is some caregiving benefits. It allows for, legal advice. It can allow for therapy, a few therapy sessions, and it's for you and your family. It's just this wonderful add-on that's not enough. A lot of people have it. They don't take full advantage of what EAP can offer. And really, EAP came through for so many folks during the pandemic, helping find dependent care and elderly care. And there's just so many services that they can put you in touch with, or that they can contact and help with. And so there's the depth of service right now is available. And yet what some folks are saying is, I feel like I'm paying more for insurance and getting less. And that
Mm.
is not what should be happening, right? At that
It,
point, and this is just one of those things I didn't know about before I got to Insperity. You should be shopping around. You should make sure, just like you shop around for everything else, don't take for granted that the first, that what you've heard forever is still true. Make sure. And
yeah.
there's lots of avenues to go, to just understand what options do you have. And that's a lot of the education we love to provide. I got to tell you, had I known that the PEO space was something when I was in corporate America, it would have been life-saving on so many levels. I wish I would have known. Would
Yeah.
have really helped. And it's not, you got to keep in mind, we don't replace, we become a resource for HR. So it's not that you won't need a full HR team, which is really helpful in the SMB. Like, you don't need to go hire a lot of HR people.
Yeah.
You need
Hire,
one
manage all that
person,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
that can liaison and yet be fully resourced as an HR team, because that's
Hmm.
what's standing behind them.
Since you mentioned the pandemic,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about what that experience, what you observed, since Insperity works with and you work with so many different businesses. Some businesses are way up, some businesses are way down or going out of business.
Yeah.
What were some
Yeah.
of your observations going into that, and what the experience was like?
It's one of those experiences, to be quite honest, that will probably live with me forever. We, because to your point, John, we walk some businesses through terrifying times and horrific times of having to lay people off, or close their doors. There was just not, and then
Nothing they could
we
do.
also, you'd go from one of those calls to another call where someone had figured out a pivot of sorts, and the company just was like jumping and thriving.
Mm.
And so it was like this up and down, that was really hard to manage from just an emotional standpoint, because some of the calls were really hard.
Well, it's
And
kind of coaching, right? I mean, like coaching, you could have clients that are way up and clients that are way down.
totally. And,
Yeah.
my team adopted this mantra that we're going to keep the human in human resources. Like, we have to keep this really human. We're dealing with humans,
Mm.
and people are struggling. So how do we show up in that space? And how do we give resources and tools to our business owners and business leaders so that they have options and they understand their options? And what do I do? This person is saying this sick. What do I do? This person needs leave. What do I do? How can I do it? What form do I file? What's available to these folks in terms of leave? Because there were all these new leaves that were available. What do I do? It was just helping and talking folks through, which meant in short order, we had to get up to speed on everything the government was passing, national as well as state, like federal and state.
Yeah,
We had to get up to
that was another thing
speed.
that was very confusing about the early days. Is there big laws that were passed that were very confusing. Yeah, I remember in those days being on calls with a bunch of other entrepreneurs and business owners that were trying to figure out, can this help save my business? And for many, it was a lifeline.
Yeah. And I will tell you that regardless of which way some of those, things went, to have people call back and say thank you, like, I think, like sometimes the best you can do in these really difficult situations is make sure that there's dignity in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so ensuring that we help people do that, because that's what business owners, it was so hard. And yet let's make sure that we're taking good care of people as possible. And then also celebrating with people that all of a sudden business was exploding. And we also saw businesses go from like 20 employees to 90 all of a sudden, because they found an avenue that was like, oh my gosh, and look, and they were going. And so it was exciting at times. And it was, you get off the phone in tears at times because it was just really sad. So I can't say enough about the team I was working with and the work that they did, just to be available to people. It was some of the hardest and also most fulfilling work I've ever done, just being lockstep with so many of our clients.
There's definitely been a movement over the last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years of people moving more towards independent work, whether it's, starting with freelancing to starting their own small business.
Sure.
I think the pandemic, accelerated a lot of that, where people now can live wherever they want. They can start these digital businesses. They can, leverage talent from the other part of the country or the other part of the globe. So, what are some of your observations in terms of the future going forward now as we come out of the pandemic, head into 2023, for the economy in general and small businesses in particular?
Ah, my goodness. Like, once again, you're opening like a whole bunch here for me. So
Yeah, I have a tendency to ask questions that are too
they're
big,
good
so I
questions.
apologize about that. So,
But they're interesting questions. These are the things I love to talk about, much to like probably my family's demise, because it's really probably only interesting to me.
yeah.
But I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered, and so I'll try and go through this, and keep me honest that I want to talk about what I think it's going to be like employee. I want to talk about what I think it's also going to be like for employers. I'm going to touch on that, and just some things to think about. So let's start with the employees. It's an employee market right now. We know that. Employees are kind of calling the shots, or at least thinking that they can call the shots. They'll tell you where they want to work, how much they want to work, a little bit. No, well, I just want to be hybrid. I want to be this. This is what works for me. And so there's this, and they're also demanding a higher price for all of that. And so I think that is, do I think that's going to stay forever? Probably not. But I think right now, employees are calling a lot of the shots. They're making good money, and they feel like they've got a lot of control over the job. And so what that backs into is that what I really believe, and this is my years of leadership. This is I don't know that this is Insperity's take on it, but this is me working in leadership for as long as I have. I really believe that the challenge leaders today are facing and are really struggling with. And I don't know, see if you would say this rings true for the folks you're talking to, is this counterbalance between accountability, because by the way, I own a business and I need things done, and compassion, because I've had to be so compassionate and so empathetic for these last 2 years. I now feel like I can't be both of these things anymore. And I'm having a hard time having accountability, because the moment I hold you accountable, if I speak really bluntly, it's almost like a spoiled child that goes, well, then I'm just going to quit.
Mm.
Right. And I think leaders today are like, but I need results or none of us are going to have a job.
Yeah.
And yet we might be able to find people, but to the point you just made, a lot of folks are doing their own kind of thing right now, because people keep asking, where are all the good employees? Well, a lot of them started a part-time gig on their own, and they're like, I'm making enough. Like, do I really need to go back to that kind of job? I can just kind of do this and maybe a little of this and maybe a little of this, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we all kind of figured out that life didn't need to look like it used to look like.
Yeah.
And so owners need to create and leaders need to create a more compelling reason to like, you got to find the people that really want to do this versus just a person. And it's harder. It's harder right now. And so I think we're pressing into our ability to lead and to be clear and to hold folks accountable, and yet be if you're I think it's always been said that people don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses.
Mm-hmm.
They leave mediocre bosses now.
Mm.
They're just
That's just bad. Yeah.
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 So you don't have to be bad anymore. You just have to not, if you're not great, you're at risk. And so the quality and caliber. Now, for some of us, we're like, I love that challenge. Like, bring me in. Like, that's what I want to do. Other folks probably need some upskilling in that. Because by the way, we as owners and leaders, we're also tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's, like we're just running up against some things, and this is where I love the EO network. So I'm going to turn this around on you guys. This is where, because I believe that the quality of your community and your network as an owner is one of the most critical decisions you're going to make right now. You have to be among like-minded people that can empathize and also push, and where you can see great things happening and go, there's a great idea. There's a great idea. You're going to need that. You can't operate as an island anymore as an owner. I don't believe. You're going to need people around you. You need a circle around you that's going to hold you up, lift you up, and keep you going and hold you accountable to being better.
Yeah. Well, Ingrid, this has been great. Where can people go to connect with you, ask you any questions, and learn more about Insperity and the work that you guys do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me, first and foremost, you can always find me on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn, Ingrid Romero. This picture or something like this will be right there for you from Insperity. You can also, I'm very happy to just provide my email, which is my name, ingrid.romero@insperity.com. And I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime around any of this stuff. These are the conversations I love to have. Thanks.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, and just pointing people to your LinkedIn, you share a lot of resources there, webinars, trainings, things like that. So that's a great resource. So go connect with her there and tell Ingrid that you heard her right here. All right, Ingrid, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.